and welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we analyse her artistry, including her lyricism, music videos, and full album retrospectives. We are your hosts, Lisa and Cameron. In this episode, we'll be breaking down All Too Well, focusing on the newly released lyrics and recent performances, as well as giving our opinions and reactions. We're very excited this episode as we are going to be deep diving into all of the new lyrics for All Too Well. We're going to be giving some background information on the song in general. We're going to be comparing the two versions now that they are both out in the world. We're going to be breaking down all the lyrics, mentioning all the other references to other songs on Red. And we're going to be speaking about controversies and theories surrounding All Too Well. Finally, we'll also be discussing the new performances of All Too Well 10-minute version.
All Too Well is written by Taylor Swift and Liz Rose, who Taylor collaborated with a lot on her earlier albums as a co-writer. And Taylor said back in 2012, the lyric in All Too Well that she's most proud of is, "And you call me up again just to break me like a promise, so casually cruel in the name of being honest." And Taylor discussed how this lyric and the rest of All Too Well kind of came about during a sound check for the Speak Now World Tour. And she said that she was just playing chords over and over again on stage, and her band joined in, and she kind of went on a bit of a rant, and that's where these lines kind of came up. And recently in an interview, Taylor also reinforced the story of how All Too Well came about, of it being something that she performed during the rehearsals and the sound checking for the Speak Now World Tour, and her band joined in and the song kind of formed of itself. And Taylor said that it took her a really long time to filter through everything that was in the song, and obviously she discussed that it was 10 minutes, and that she got Liz Rose on board to help her kind of filter it down and cut the song down to a more manageable size song. Liz Rose herself also said that the song was either 10, 12 or 15 minutes long before cutting it down. Recently in an interview, Liz Rose also said that it could have actually been a 20-minute song, which is just crazy. But obviously they cut the song down, and in the end, the original version was obviously 5 minutes, 28 seconds. Then now, obviously, we have the 10-minute version. But Taylor also revealed in the Rolling Stone 500 Greatest Albums podcast that there was an explicit lyric and that it had the F word in it. So now we know. So yeah, that's kind of the how All Too Well came about and its original formation. And obviously this idea of her performing on the Speak Now World Tour was a kind of theory that was talked about a lot, but was sometimes debunked. But now we know that this is actually the origin of All Too Well. And I think it's a really nice kind of story of how it came about, that Taylor kind of, these lyrics were just pouring out of her, and that the band kind of joined in and this song formed. And Taylor also talked about how her mother went over to the sound board and asked them if they had recorded the band and Taylor going through All Too Well, and then they handed her the CD, which is obviously the infamous CD with the original 10-minute version.
Yeah, it's really such a magical story of how All Too Well came about, and how really it was the fans' insistence on this 10-minute version that was just mentioned once a long time ago that it's been released. And I think what is really nice, and what Taylor has been highlighting over the last few days, is that this really is a song for the fans. Like, who else is going to listen to a 10-minute song, you know?
Yeah, I think that is what's so nice about it, is that the song isn't about anyone or anything, and it's for the fans that have wanted it for so long and wanted to hear the version. This is, as Taylor said herself in a recent interview, this is the version of All Too Well, that like, this is the version, the one that was meant to be, and the one that fans deserve. I think what's quite nice is obviously how the song's changed, and how now Taylor just loves this song so much because of the way that the fans have just loved it so much.
It's such a sweet backstory, a really big coincidence that someone was there recording it, and a masterful breakdown of the lyrics by Liz Rose and Taylor, and then this version finally seeing the light.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think that Taylor and Liz Rose did such a good job of cutting the song down originally, but still making it have that, although that heartbreak and the essence that the 10-minute version has, but fitting it into kind of 5 minutes 28. But now having the full thing, it just adds so much more to that story, and just enhances it, and just adds more kind of pieces to the jigsaw puzzle that we didn't realise were missing. But when you hear the full version, you realise, oh no, the original is kind of lacking those pieces, even though the original is obviously amazing in itself anyway.
Okay, so that's something that we can get into next. A comparison between the two versions of All Too Well, and also answering our worries and our questions that we asked in our previous episode. So, if you did listen to our last episode, episode 7, we spoke about, at the end of the episode, some of our excitement and expectations from Red Taylor's version. And we spoke about the two versions of All Too Well and how we were kind of worried that the 10-minute version of All Too Well would outshine the original version and the original version would kind of become obsolete. So, Cameron, how do you feel about the original 5-minute version of All Too Well? Now we have the 10-minute version of All Too Well.
So obviously that version was like my favourite Taylor Swift song ever and favourite song ever, but I just think that because this new version adds so much more, and even though I was slightly, when I first listened to it, the new production on obviously the 10-minute one, the original is obviously identical, but the new production on this one was like, oh, I wasn't too sure about it, because obviously I've heard the song in a certain way for so many years, nearly 10 years, that I was slightly taken back by the production. Was like, oh, am I actually going to like this? But now this is the only version I've listened to. Like, it is just amazing, and this is now the version that I will listen to forever, because I just don't think. The other day I clicked on, the karaoke versions that have been released on
Yeah.
YouTube. I clicked on it and was just kind of listening along, and then was about to go into that, and I was like, oh no, I'm on the wrong one. You know what I mean? I was like, no, I want to go to the 10-minute one. So I think the 10-minute one, I don't think the original is obsolete. I think that because even Taylor herself has said that this is the version,
Right.
that it is just the only one that I can listen to, because I just love all the new elements and the new parts of the song.
Right.
How are
Okay.
you feeling about it? How are you?
Yeah, obviously the story is so much more fleshed out now, which is something that we'll get into as we break down the lyrics. There's so many, like you said before, you gave a perfect metaphor. All of the pieces of the jigsaw kind of have appeared, like
Yeah.
these missing parts, which in a way you don't feel like they're missing when
No.
we just had that version, but now we
Yeah.
have this version. It's kind of, we look back at the other version and you do kind of see, oh, okay, so this happened here,
Yeah.
this was missing here, or whatever. However, I do think the abridged version, the original version, still does have a lot of value. And I
Yes.
do still think that the way that Liz and Taylor cut it down was so well done. It
Oh,
was so well
definitely.
done.
Because initially I was like, oh, I wish you kept the production the same, but now I'm like, no, I'm glad, because it gives you an incentive to listen to the original, and
Right.
it breaks them apart as two separate kind of things, rather than one just feeling lackluster because it hasn't got all these new lyrics, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I get that.
I'm glad that the production was kind of split, and that the new one has a slightly different, more Evermore-y kind of production. That's the kind of vibe that I get from the
Yeah, in a
10-minute
way.
version.
Hmm.
But I'm glad that she did that, and it just makes them more distinct and gives you a reason to listen to the original.
It's also really new at the moment,
Yeah.
and obviously it's understandable, this excitement and build up, and just it's been 10 years basically in the
Yep.
making. So I understand if people do enjoy it more. Just as you said, there'll be an appreciation for both versions,
Yeah.
especially because of the different production, the different sound. I don't know, I just feel like I don't feel like the other one is lacking, which is great. More than anything, that's how I felt. I felt like a big appreciation and admiration to Taylor and Liz on how they cut it all down. That must have been so
Yeah.
hard to do.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree. And also with the original, I quite like the male voice in the background. Obviously, on the original version, it was Nathan Chapman. I like that is still the same, with the male voice behind her voice as the backing vocals. And again, I like the differences, because it makes you appreciate them both separately, rather than appreciating one more than the other, because you're like, nah, it's just better. But they both kind of are both as strong, like we've said.
For sure. And finally, the last thing about this new version, we discussed briefly in our last episode. How do you feel about it being so long? Does it feel like 10 minutes to you? We kind of discussed last time about listening to it 3 times, it's like half an hour.
It doesn't feel 10 minutes long at all, and
Right.
the new bits are just so good, especially towards the end. And they're just so good that it's like, for me, it doesn't feel like it's 10 minutes long, and I
Yeah.
don't feel like I'm thinking, oh, when's this song going to end? It's because the emotion is so raw and the lyrics are so strong. These new lyrics just hold up to the
They
ones
really
that
do.
the original kind of ones that we know. That I don't think, definitely don't have worries that it's too long at all. I definitely don't feel that way. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I agree. Knowing most of the lyrics or a good portion of them, that part of the lyrics always passes by quickly because it's kind of
Yeah.
like the original song in a way. And then the new ones, I don't know, they just fit in quite well and they just flow really nicely. And to be honest with you, I'm so obsessed, which is again something we'll get into, with that last verse and outro. The time goes really, really quick.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to analysing the lyrics and breaking them down of the 10-minute version. So obviously the kind of first part of the song is identical to the original version, with the opening verse being about the scarf, which we now know to be a Gucci scarf. Probably why Taylor wanted that scarf back, so it was probably very expensive. And
Yeah.
obviously at the start it talks about the autumn leaves, which now in this new version, the weather is something that's really, really discussed. And I think also even in a lot of the vault tracks, there's this new kind of a lot of
Theme.
discussion about snow, which wasn't really a thing in the original version of Red, which I think is really, really cool. It extends the relationship a bit further, if you know what I mean, rather than just an autumnal relationship. It kind of pulls it over into winter. And I think obviously in this version, the autumn leaves kind of mark the it marks the beginning of the relationship. And I think that this is quite an odd way to start a relationship in autumn, because autumn is deemed as dying. So it's almost like this
Right.
idea that like it's already kind
Bit
of
cursed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's already kind of, whereas normally you think of like spring or summer, you know, as the start of a relationship, stuff blooming and blossoming. So
Yeah.
I've always found this interesting that the relationship starts in autumn. And obviously the lyrics, like I said, are the same as the original, so it goes all the way up to the photo album, and then you taught me about your past, thinking that your future was me, and then we move on to the first of new extended lyrics.
As you said, autumn is quite an interesting moment to start a relationship in, but I think one of the best lyrics from this opening of the song, apart from your sweet disposition and my wide-eyed gaze, which I love, is the autumn leaves falling down like pieces into place. That metaphor is just so beautiful, and like you said, I really do think the relationship is kind of cursed because autumn moves to winter and things die, which is something we'll see. It's that imagery of the autumn leaves, they're driving down this road and they're all falling and everything is slotting into place. I've always loved that lyric.
Yeah, me too. It reminds me of a kind of jigsaw puzzle of these pieces just making it. It's just falling like it couldn't be more perfect, and they're just everything is going right. And I think yeah, it is such a gorgeous opening to a song.
Yeah, it really does paint this picture of the beginning of a relationship. And then directly after this first verse, we get the I know it's long gone and the magic's not here no more. And it's kind of like this shift that, leads us to the chorus, of course, but it's very, very the juxtaposition between it both. It's like we get this beautiful opening and then we go to the sad. I remember it all too well. Now we go into the new portion of the song. The new extended lyrics start here. After you taught me about your past, thinking your future was me, as Cameron said, we get the new verse, which starts with and you were tossing me the car keys, and then we get the F-bomb, which Taylor previously mentioned. Fuck the patriarchy, keychain on the ground. This lyric seems to be a bit controversial because people were understanding it in different ways. And to be honest with you, the first time I listened to it, I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah,
And then I got it.
yeah, same here. I was kind of like, whoa, I didn't expect the F word to be in that. I just didn't expect it to be said in that context at all. And I was slightly like, whoa, wait. I initially, on my first listen, thought that was because he was making her drive and being like, you drive.
Yes.
Like, you know.
Yes, that's what I thought at first.
Yeah, because of the way that she sings it.
Worded it.
The key chain on the ground thing just sounds a bit like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to, it doesn't flow with the kind of the patriarchy bit. And then after listening to it a couple of times, I thought, no, that's what is written on this keychain.
Exactly.
And it's the whole idea of him kind of being a fake feminist, of having the person that she's singing about, having this keychain, but then treating her horrendously.
Badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like it now, and this is one of my kind of favorite lyrics to just say. It is so fun. Like, it's such a cool lyric now, and now that I kind of understand it a bit more, it's not as like it seemed a bit kind of, I know, it just seemed
disjointed.
To yeah, it did. Yeah, initially on the
which is how I read it like that in a way on purpose, because we get that break, but then you get it. Oh, it's a keychain that says "fuck the patriarchy" on it. Oh, okay.
exactly. And
And
also,
it
what's
is
quite
very
funny,
ironic.
yeah, what's quite funny now is obviously Taylor's merch team have now released a leather keychain with that written on it. I'm glad that they did that because I think a lot
So
of
am I.
people
I
were
love that
wanting that.
stuff.
It's just quite fun. I've always loved merch that's kind of it feels like you've put your hand into a screen or into a film or a kind of song or whatever and pulled the thing out that they're talking about. So it's quite cool that they've done the notebook of the All Too Well book seen in the film, and now the keychain. Personally, I expected the F bomb to be in
The bridge.
the bridge of the kind of tearing up thing.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was going to be there, so I didn't expect it to be that early on. It was like, oh, new lyrics. Oh my gosh, the F word. You know what I mean? I was like, whoa. And I think that was what was quite weird about listening to the 10-minute version for the first time, was that it was like hearing a song you knew, but then every so often you were like, wait.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, these lyrics weren't here. Like, what on earth? But no, I do really like the start of this. I think it's quite cool.
After that, we get the lyrics of her thinking that he's going to call it love, but he doesn't. And this is such and then the metaphor then extends, and then it talks about like how he didn't believe it was love during the relationship. He realized too late that he didn't take the relationship seriously, basically, is what Taylor's getting at here. And then he realized too late that it was love. And by the time he realized, the relationship, as Taylor describes, is dead, gone, buried, 3 months in the grave. Such an amazing metaphor of
Oh,
death.
I love these lyrics, and they are so heartbreaking. The idea, and it says like, I was thinking on the drive down, any time now he's gonna say it's love. You never
But
called
he
it what it was,
doesn't. But
and
he
I think
doesn't.
that's such a heartbreaking image. And you can imagine her sat in the car thinking, oh my gosh, like we're so in love, like he's
Yeah,
gonna
he's gonna
say
say,
it,
I love you.
and then
Yeah.
he doesn't, and it's just this heartbreaking. And then the insane metaphor of till we were dead and gone and buried. Check the pulse and come back swearing that it's the same after 3 months in the grave. I just love that lyric. It's just insane. This idea of, you know, this kind of dead, the relationship is a kind of dead body, and being
Yeah.
like, oh no, I am in love. Are you still about? It's like, no, you're 3 months too late now. And I think my one of my favorite lyrics from these new lyrics is but all I felt was shame and you held my lifeless frame. I just think that is
Right.
this verse is just insane.
This verse as well gives us an amazing contrast or reference to other songs in Red. Obviously, the State of Grace secret message behind the song in the album booklet is I love you doesn't count after goodbye. And that is kind of what she's getting at here.
Yeah, this is what I love about these vault tracks on Red and All Too Well, specifically the 10-minute version, is that they do add the missing pieces in the
Yeah.
whole Red album puzzle, and it's amazing how there's so many crossovers now with kind of like with this, the I love you doesn't count after goodbye, basically being a lyric now in All Too Well. I just think it just
Yep.
enhances that whole album and the whole story.
Yeah, this particular verse also makes We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together so much sadder. Like, it puts it into a perspective that I hate you, you call me, I love you. Never Ever Getting Back Together, obviously, it's very happy, very poppy song, but if you look at it, of course, that was written in a point of time where she was kind of like over that relationship or beginning to get over it.
Mm.
But if you look at it, it wasn't kind of just this thing of going back and forth. It was literally that she felt kind of destroyed, her lifeless frame.
Okay, so now we move back into the kind of original lyrics of All Too Well with the and I know it's long gone, and then talking about the dancing in the kitchen, in the refrigerator light. That verse ends with I remember it all too well, and then we move back into the new lyrics.
Give us more perspective on how the relationship was quite different for Taylor and for the other person. For Taylor, she's looking after the relationship as if it was an oath, like a sacred promise, like something that really weighs on her. She's taking it seriously, basically. Whereas he keeps it like a secret, which is kind of, when you look at it, a secret can be something, you know, you don't want anyone to know about. You want to hide it away. It kind of gives this idea of a dirty little secret that you want to just like push away. Whereas
Like
she's
you're
like,
ashamed of it.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, where she's like keeping it like an oath, which is something so like sacred prayer is.
Yeah, and this is what I love about this verse in particular, is it says like I kept you like an oath, sacred prayer, and we'd swear to remember it. I just love the idea of it's almost like a religion, like the oath, the sacred prayer, and swearing that this is, you know, that you're for each other, and you know we're going to promise. He broke that, obviously. This almost sounds like alternative lyrics to the kind of ones that we know from All Too Well, and but I do love this lyric, this verse as well. The contrast of the secret and the oath.
Two things that this song should be remembered by is the absolutely amazing metaphors that are created in it, and also just like these minute details that she kind of brings to life. Like I said it with the first verse and the autumn leaves fall in, and I'll say it again now with the kitchen refrigerator light. Like that amount of detail, that just that little detail really brings the song to life and gives you such a vivid imagery. It's crazy. Next, we have the original bridge. So we go into, maybe we got lost in translation, maybe I asked for too much. So all original lyrics, which again take a new meaning when we compare it to a song such as Babe, Taylor's version that she recently released. And we have that "What about your promises?" echoing lyric throughout Babe. So here she says, you know, you break me like a promise. So it's just like that reinforcement of them lyrics.
I also think as well that the breaking kind of refers back to that lifeless frame thing. And again, that like we've said a million times, these lyrics just enhance each other more and just add to the kind of story so much more. And yeah, the Babe thing is really interesting. And one thing that I'm intrigued by is whether those Babe lyrics were on the original or something that she has now added, like with Bye Bye Baby, where those lyrics were changed, or That's When, to add the kind of double perspective. So I'm intrigued to know whether the "What About Your Promises" section is something that she's then added, or whether it was on the original, hence why All Too Well discusses in its original lyrics about breaking promises. Okay, and now we move into another new verse, which starts with, they say, "All's well that ends well, but I'm in a new hell every time you cross my mind." So how are we feeling about this verse?
This one is crazy. We get so many references to other songs in the Taylor Swift universe. So obviously we start with that a Lover parallel, which obviously now we can see because we have Lover and now we're going back to Red. But I've always thought that Lover and Red as albums, and this is something that we've discussed previously, are quite similar. Obviously they have very different conclusions to them, but they are both similar in the same as they both have this essence to them. They both speak about love and all the different aspects of love. And then obviously we have Red being the breakdown of love and Lover being like the flourishing of love. But it's really interesting to see that there's many, many parallels between Red lyrics and Lover lyrics.
Yes, this "All's well that ends well" lyric is interesting, yet how then that was used later on in the kind of Lover, for the song Lover. If you've seen on our Instagram, we've been talking about how in our first ever episode where we broke down the all the Easter eggs for the Lover music video, we discussed the ones of the birthday party where her lover is with her, and we also mirrored it with the "Moment I Knew." And now obviously these new lyrics on "All Too Well" and the visuals from the short film reinforce that idea of that her lover now does all these things that the previous ones should have. And it's interesting, these parallels, but like you said, these albums do kind of run along the same train track, but just in different parallel universes where one worked out and one really didn't. So no, if you would like to hear us talk about that and analyse the Lover music video, make sure you go back and check out our first episode.
So double cross means to betray someone. So it's not just that the person is going through their mind, it's that the person and their betrayal has gone through their mind. Then we move into the lyrics about the age difference. So this is a new kind of theme that moves through this song. We get it now, and then we get a call back to it afterwards in kind of like the final verse outro part. And basically, one of the reasons the relationship breaks down is because of this apparent difference in age.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this is obviously when it was announced about Sadie Sink and Dylan O'Brien being in the film, lots of people were like, "Oh, wait, there's a big age difference." Like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Point.
which was obviously done because of this lyric, and because of the idea that they were so different in age. But I think what's so sad about this is it says that you said if we had been closer in age, maybe it would have been fine, and that made me want to die, which obviously is just so heartbreaking, and again calls back to the lifeless frame stuff.
So the next image that Taylor describes is this contrast between who her lover thinks she is, or supposedly thinks she is, and what a mess she's really in. So she says, "What was the idea you had of me? Like I was never needy and ever lovely, a jewel that reflects on you." So obviously she's talking about how she feels like he really didn't give her anything. He really just thought, you know, she never needed anything. She was just this beautiful side piece on his arm. But the reality is that she was a mess once, you know, the relationship broke down. She's weeping in a party bathroom.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this bit as well is obviously it then says some actress asking me what happened. There's been a lot of discussion recently about who this
Oh, yeah.
some
Yeah.
actress is. So initially there was a kind of discussion on the internet that it was Jennifer Addison from
From
Friends,
Friends. Yeah.
because of the thing that she said that she saw Taylor
During this
uh,
period.
during this kind of period, and she asked and told her that everything would be fine. But now that's kind of been debunked, I think, and a lot of people are now saying that it's Anne Hathaway. So people are saying that because there was an interview where Anne Hathaway talked about how she was with Taylor at some party. I'm intrigued to see, because it's the way that Taylor says it, some actress, like
Yeah.
Jennifer and Anne Hathaway are a bit more than some actresses, they're like kind of Hollywood titans.
Read some theories about this lyric as well, and about it being like how she describes the actress as some actress. And
Mm.
it's kind of like maybe everything was very blurry, everything, she was so distraught about everything. It was
Mm.
just like a random person. You know, when you're so sad that you
Yeah,
don't
that
even.
you're just like, oh, I can't remember who, but some sort of actress came up
Exactly. Now we move on to the lyric about the love interest charming Taylor's dad. And this reminds a lot of people of a lyric from Speak Now, from Last Kiss, where she says, I love your handshake, meeting my father. So it's this idea of, you know, the person that she's in love with is so comfortable with her family, and also this way that this person is so charming, is kind of everyone is enthralled with them. Then behind the scenes, he's, you know, not so charming.
Again, like I mentioned earlier, here is another kind of parallel between the deluxe song on Red called The Moment I Knew, and the lyric in the new All Too Well is, but then he watched me watch the front door all night, willing you to come, and he said, it's supposed to be fun, turning 21. If you've listened to The Moment I Knew, which I'm sure you have, you would know that her lover did not show up for her 21st birthday, and obviously she was very upset and distraught, as anyone would be. So I think that, again, ties in all of those songs together, all the Red songs together, and enhances on those kind of images. But one thing that Lisa has mentioned, which I think you should talk about, is the idea of the 21 thing.
A lot of people have been pointing out how this lyric really gives a new perspective on how the track listing of Red is laid out, and how this lyric of turning 21 can be directly contrasted to how the song 22 appears next in the track list. And it's kind of not coincidence, really. All Too Well is all about this 21st year in her life and how it all went pretty badly. And then 22 is like this jarring shift to, you know, happy times. But
Yeah,
I
no,
think it's,
I
yeah,
think I
not
think
a
that
coincidence.
no, I don't think so either. Because I've always been really confused by that track listing. Because Taylor is so particular about track listings, and especially with Red, where obviously you start with like State of Grace, then you go into Red, and then you go into things like Treacherous, where you know that you're entering a dangerous relationship, you go for it anyway. And then I Knew You Were Trouble of like, oh, I knew that this was going to end like this. And then obviously All Too Well, and Taylor's discussed specifically about those three songs being placed purposefully. And then All Too Well and 22 I've always just found so jarring. But this idea, this theory just makes so much more sense, and I think is actually something that I don't think is a coincidence. And I think that you're right, that then we move on from the 21 age into 22, and the difference of the excitement of turning 22.
In a way, if The Moment I Knew had been included in the original Red, I think it could have been included after All Too Well as a segue into 22. But I guess it was too many sad songs all at once, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that Taylor has kind of talked about.
Mm.
Was that with the reason why Red is kind of how Red was because she was told not to have a certain amount of breakup songs or country songs or pop song, So yeah, I do think that's probably why it was maybe left off, because that would be quite a full-on go from All Too Well to Moment I Knew That. I think in a reordering of the track list in terms of
Yeah.
storyline, and maybe this is something that we could do on a future episode, is ordering the Red track list for the storyline of the relationship and ordering all of these songs so that they tell the story chronologically.
We then move back into the original lyrics. Time won't fly, it's like I'm paralyzed by it. And here we have a callback to the scarf. So obviously at the beginning of the song, Taylor has left her scarf at her love interest's sister's house, and here she talks about how she has received her things, he's mailed back her things, and she walks home alone, but he keeps her old scarf. And this metaphor of how we follow the scarf through this journey and how he keeps it, like, even though it's kind of like very similar to the idea of I bet you think about me. He can't completely let go so that he doesn't give back this scarf. And again, it is ties into this big metaphor of a loss of innocence, which Taylor highlighted quite a lot during the All Too Well short film. And she spoke about how, you know, this coming of age story and this loss of innocence can be seen in many people's lives, not just her own. And I think that's really well reflected in the metaphor of the scarf.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen a resurgence of this scarf with the new one that is being sold on Taylor's store, the All Too Well scarf, the red one, which I think is really cool that it's become such a symbolic image of the Red album, this scarf. And all the promo and teasing with Starbucks and stuff, they've all been using this scarf emoji. And with the promo boxes that they're sending out to celebrities, they're all sending out the scarf. And I just think it's just a nice kind of symbol.
Is the image
the
of
image
red.
of the red, especially
Yeah.
the image of All Too Well, but it's become the image of red as well.
So this would now lead us into what the original outro of the song actually was. She's emphasizing, I remember it, I remember it, I remember it, which is kind of, I saw a lot of discussion of people thinking that this was a lyric that was so emphasized because when you go through such like a traumatizing experience, especially with someone who maybe has gaslit you for such a long time, you have to emphasize, no, I was there, I know what I felt, I know that this was real, even if you didn't feel it or didn't perceive it in the same way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that that was the kind of reason for the repetition of I remember it, you remember it, you remember it, I remember it. You know, like
Yeah.
between us, we remembered it. That did happen. Don't try and act like it didn't, because it did. So no, I think that that made sense for the original version as the outro. But obviously, with these new added lyrics that we're about to move into, the new outro makes even more sense. These new lyrics after the original outro start with, and I was never good at telling jokes, but the punchline goes, I'll get older, but your lovers stay my age. What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I love this part. It's my favorite part out of all the new lyrics. And the key change obviously signals like this big moment that this final verse and outro becomes. But this part in particular, this lyric in particular, is very ironic because obviously she's calling back to the age gap that he mentioned. So he says, you know, we can't work out because there's too much of a big age gap between us. But then, oh, well, that's funny because your lovers are still my age, even though
Yeah.
I'm growing up.
So it's like it wasn't the age gap, though, it was me. Rather than,
Basically.
yeah, and I think I do really love this kind of key change. I did not expect it when I was listening. I thought, oh, okay, we come to the end. Gosh, that was a quick 10 minutes. And then I was
Right.
like, oh gosh, we've still got another like 4 minutes on top of this. So no, I do love this added section. And also we then move into the when your Brooklyn broke my skin and bones. Again, the idea of the lifeless frame, the broken promises, those kind of things. I'm a soldier who's returned half her weight.
These lyrics again can really be contrasted with the lyrics that you mentioned earlier and this metaphor of like death and really, really going through it. So I'm a soldier who's returning half her weight. Obviously, it can be related to, for example, Tolerate It on Folklore, where she says, you know, gain the weight of you, then lose it. So, like, literally breaking up with someone and losing that metaphorical weight. But then I think it also can be interpreted quite literally. Going through a bad time, like a depressing time or a troubling time, kind of affects your physical health as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a tough lyric really to sing
Oh,
because
100%.
it's such a real raw moment.
Okay, and then obviously we go into, and did the twin flame bruise paint you blue? Just between us, did the love affair mean you two? And the just between us, did the love affair mean you two was teased over on Taylor's TikTok a while before Red came out, and I loved that lyric, and I think it fits perfectly with this idea of the twin flame. And do you want to describe what a twin flame is about?
Yeah, so a twin flame is basically what you could equivalent to a soulmate or finding someone who basically mirrors you and in a relationship. And, you know, it's kind of like a meant to be kind of relationship. And it's something that is described in State of Grace quite well. So in State of Grace, she does mention the twin fire signs and four blue eyes. So it's someone that she really felt akin with, you know, in the relationship.
And I think also the idea of painting you blue then calls back to Red, the song,
Hmm.
with the losing him was blue, like I'd never known. Again, the colours of emotions, with obviously red, burning passion, but also danger, and then blue again with the kind of sadness and cold.
And then we move into this amazing lyric, very reflective lyric, where Taylor sings, "In the city's barren cold, I still remember the first fall of snow and how it glistened as it fell. I remember it all too well." This lyric is crazy.
Oh, it gives me goosebumps. Like, it just gives me goosebumps. And especially when she performed it on SNL with the snow falling. And like we said, the kind of transition
Yes.
from autumn to winter. Oh,
Hmm.
I love this lyric. I absolutely love it.
So this really extends that weather metaphor. So we had that autumn, as you described really well earlier on, and now we have at the end of the song, which is so well placed, this move to the first fall of snow, winter, and just like the death, it is like this devastating ending of
Of
the
the
relationship
relationship, yeah.
reflected so well in the weather. And I loved that in the SNL performance you had the leaves falling down and then the wind blowing her and then this snowfall at the end. Oh,
It was a perfect kind of visual of this starting off when stuff is starting to die anyway in winter, and then by sorry, in autumn, and then by winter, when trees are kind of all the leaves have died, and now it's the coldness again, the
the
coldness of the
barren,
relationship, the
yeah,
barren, the idea that there's nothing left.
there's nothing growing, yep.
Yeah, and I think it's just a really, really, really amazing metaphor. And it's interesting how Taylor herself said that she left some of her favorite lyrics on the cutting room floor. And if I was to guess and bet, I would guess that this is probably one of those lyrics that was so hard to get rid of for the original.
In reference to this winter snow lyric, I do want to highlight a tweet that Taylor posted back in December 2010 that has recently resurfaced. So at that point, she was in Nashville for her 21st birthday party, and she tweeted the night before, the 13th, that snowflakes are flurrying down outside and it's my last day of being 20. So this tweet basically confirms and gives credibility to this winter snow lyric. And it really goes to show that something that was such a nice memory for her, she was so excited about the snow and about it being her 21st birthday, eventually turned into a much sadder moment and makes this lyric so much heavier as it really is rooted in a real experience.
The new outro of this song, similarly to the original outro of the song, is a repetition of all these key moments and then saying, I was there. And then you remember it just as I remember it. But it starts off with these questions, and they're kind of like a plea of just between us. Do you remember it all too well? Just between us. Did the love affair maim you just as it did to me, you know?
Yeah, I love this idea of like, look, just between you and me, you don't have to admit it to anyone else, but just admit
Yeah.
it to me that this affected you like it did me. Like, I'm not the only one. You can't pretend like this never happened. And just between us, I just think that that's such a cool lyric of like, just look at me and tell me. I don't care if you lie to anyone else, but just between us. It's such a
Oh,
direct,
it's so
isn't it?
beautiful.
Of
Yeah.
like, do you remember it like I remember it? Did it
Yeah.
affect you like it affected me? I just think that these lyrics, again, are just so personal and so kind of direct. The end of the song is, like we said, a massive repetition of "Wind in my hair, I was there; down the stairs, I was there; sacred prayer, I was there," and then the "It was rare, you remember it all too well." And I really love, again, the repetition of, like you said earlier, reminding of having to remind yourself that it was real. And I think what's quite nice about this is pulling out key moments of the relationship. So the "wind in my hair" moment that was mentioned earlier on in the song, down the stairs right towards the start, and then the sacred prayer thing. I think that it's Taylor does a really, really good job of just kind of highlighting. It's almost like a supercut, a highlight reel of that relationship. I was there at this moment, I was there then, and all these key moments. So I really love the outro of this song, and I think it is done incredibly well.
So that brings us to the end of the lyrical breakdown. And what's your new favourite lyric?
Oh, I really love the "You kept me like a secret, and I kept you like an oath." I also
Right.
love "Lifeless Frame" and the "In the city's barren cold, I still remember the first fall of snow and how it glistened as it fell." I just think all of those are my new favourites. What are yours?
Yeah, I have to go straight to that last lyric. Yeah, and my favorite ever, like from the whole thing, I still remember the first fall of snow.
Yeah.
It's just, I love it. It gets to me every single time.
Yeah, and the way that it's sung with the kind of backing vocals behind it, it sounds amazing.
Just as a final nod to this song, we also have to mention the secret message behind it in the original red booklets. So the secret message behind All Too Well is maple lattes, which calls back to a specific time in Taylor's life, but also kind of can be related to her recent collaboration with Starbucks now. With the release of this 10-minute version of All Too Well, obviously there's a lot of theories and controversies surrounding it, and one of them is that the lyrics that appear in the Lover booklets, which were apparently, original lyrics from All Too Well, actually don't appear in this 10-minute version of the song.
These original lyrics, like Lisa said, were featured in the Lover booklets, were written during February 2011, and they say, "There we are again when you blew the candle out, took this blazing love, steered it right into the ground, running scared, I was there." So how do you feel about these lyrics not being in the 10-minute version that we now have?
So these lyrics kind of presented to us as being the original All Too Well lyrics, but if you look at them, the changes are minute. Like there's only a few parts, like the one that you just read, that actually are different lyrics. And I feel like these were alternative lyrics, but not necessarily like the original part of the 10-minute version.
I feel the same. I feel like they were ones that were kind of scribbled down, and then other words actually replaced the ones that are there.
Exactly.
But I do really like them. I do like the idea of this candle, the kind of delicate flame, but then the blazing, again, the idea of the red from the song Red, the idea of red being a kind of symbol of like passion and blazing love. And then again, the idea of steering the kind of car, the Maserati. These lyrics do really link up with all the kind of other red themed lyrics that we have. So I'm slightly ashamed that these didn't appear, because obviously for a couple of years we believed these to be the ones that would be in the 10-minute one. But like you said, I think that they were just draft ones rather than actual ones.
Yeah, I think it might have even been hard for her to place these lyrics into the song, because if you look at it, like the ones that you just read out, for example, are literally the ones that would replace the bridge part,
Yeah.
right? So in a way, it was hard for her to replace it, and I think it's hard to like repeat the same very, very similar lyric again. So with the lyrics that do appear in the Lover Diary, because there's so few changes to them, I'm glad we have them, because it's interesting to see how Taylor's process of changing lyrics up works, but I don't think they could have fit in this song in like a cohesive way, in the way that the new lyrics do.
I do agree. And talking about controversial lyrics in All Too Well, how are you feeling about these theories and ideas that the key change section, which starts with "and I'm never good at telling jokes, but the punchline goes," and so on, how do you feel about these ideas that these are not original lyrics, and that these are ones much like "Bye Bye Baby" and "That's When" that have been added?
Yeah, so I do understand why a lot of people have that opinion. Even towards the beginning of the song, all of the new lyrics do have like this weight to them that like sounds like or seems like they've been written more in Taylor's folklore era than the
Yeah.
Red era. But I really don't think that that's true, because as we have analyzed through our lyric breakdown, there's so many ties into different songs, and I can tell in some cases why some lyrics were left behind, because those lyrics are then basically echoed in other songs. Now, I do feel like the most reflective last part of the song don't feel like they're new, like they were written now. I do feel like they were written back then. I
Yeah.
do feel like they were probably edited or revised now from like this more grown up point of view or perspective, especially that last
Yeah, I
verse.
think that, yeah, people keep seeing the idea of, and I'm never good at telling jokes, but the punchline goes, "I'll get older, but your lovers stay my age." A lot of people are seeing that as, because of obviously that relationship now, the person is dating people that are similar ages to Taylor, that they're seeing that as her looking back and being like, "But you're still dating people that were my age." But I don't think that is the perspective of it at all. I think it's that it even says, "I'll get older, but your lovers,"
Yeah, like a future.
she even knows then that it's not because of age, because she knows that that's not the reason. I personally don't think that these are new lyrics as such, in terms of they've been written recently. I think that these are the original 10-minute version ones, because I think the way that she's been advertising it and talking about All Too Well is that these are the original ones, and I think that I don't think that she would make that up.
I get it. Like the lyrics are so well crafted that in a way you kind of people look back and say, how can a 21-year-old do it? But I think it's because we're so used to the All Too Well lyrics in general
Yeah,
that you don't realize that she didn't just randomly start writing amazingly now. She's
no,
always wrote beautifully. It's
yeah,
just you're so used to them. I mean, like we've discussed in our lyric breakdown again, there's so many amazing lyrics. We've had them for such a long time. So I agree with you. I do think these lyrics fit. Obviously, they might have been edited or revised from a point of view of, a more mature songwriter. Altogether, this song really does fit together and it does run nicely through the whole thing. So I do
yeah.
believe that
No, I agree. I think that, yeah,
this is
some
the original version in
lyrics, yeah,
its full
full
splendor.
self. Yeah, I do agree, and I think that, yeah, there's lots of lyrics on the original that are just as heartbreaking and just as strong, but because we've had them for so long, we aren't now looking at them like these new ones are being like, whoa. But some of those original lyrics are just as heartbreaking and just as kind of have just as much depth as these new ones.
For
And
sure.
also another obviously controversial topic at the moment is that the massive repetition at the end of Just Between Us and Wind in My Hair, I Was There, Sacred Prayer, I Was There, the kind of final outro. Lots of people are arguing that actually the song isn't really 10 minutes, it's more like 9, and that this extra minute was added because
Oh God.
Taylor had been in interviews, because she just said, oh, the 10-minute version, rounding it up, rather than saying, oh, I had a 9-minute version, that because
Yeah.
fans have been pushing so hard for a 10-minute specifically version, that these were just added again to carry over to that timestamp.
In my opinion, let's face it, if the original version was this, which is what Taylor describes it as, it's like this rant during a sound check.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been, like Liz Rose said, it could have been 15, 20 minutes. Because if you think about it, it's probably there was a lot of repetition of different parts.
Yeah.
And it was very unorganized and just a lot of different like word salad moments.
Yeah.
So I kind of get it being an outro that long because there was probably lots of instrumental moments as well. So I really don't.
Yeah, no,
I don't feel that
I
the
don't
outro's
feel
the problem.
no, I don't feel like that either. I think if you're in that moment and you're just saying lyrics out loud while they're just coming to you and people are playing along, this would be something that you probably would just be repeating. So I
Yeah,
do
and
feel
I
like
think
this.
it's a lovely outro. I love it.
Oh, I think it's absolutely amazing. And on the discussion of the outro, I guess we'll now move into quickly talking about the performances Taylor has done of All Too Well 10-minute version. So obviously the first ever live performance of this song was done acoustically at the All Too Well premiere. And what do you think about that performance?
Though the two performances are kind of more like stripped back performances, there's a big difference between them. That first acoustic one, I love that she did it for the first time there with the fans. And yeah, really well sung. She really, for both performances, really, but that one especially, when it's just her and her guitar, it's always a special performance.
Oh, definitely.
And she just is so interesting to see how she can really hold a crowd's attention for 10 whole minutes.
Yeah, and just with a guitar. No, I totally agree. And then obviously contrasting with the performance that she did on SNL, where she performed obviously the whole 10-minute version and full band, she changed up some of the production elements, stops when she says certain stuff, and then obviously the outro is more vocal.
Yes, a cappella.
Which is amazing.
The silence behind it.
Amazing.
It almost is a sacred prayer, if you know what I mean. Like she brought
yes.
that lyric really to life with that. Like the a cappella, kind of her and her backup singers, the Starlights, just singing that part.
So
It was
well.
such a good,
I think
so
that
well done.
honestly, I generally think that is one of my favourite Taylor Swift performances of all time. I just think that the emotion that she kind of sang that song with, the passion, and the starting with the guitar and then going in and the wind blowing, like we said, the autumn leaves falling, and then the snow. I just think that it was such an amazing performance, and that ending was just a really kind of cool musical moment. And I think what was really sweet at the end of this performance was that Taylor looked so happy, and her and her bandmates were so happy, and I think it's such a lovely contrast from how she used to perform the song and used to find the song so heartbreaking and so sad. But because now the song has gone on to mean so many other things than what it originally meant, it's just lovely. Taylor just has this love for this song because of how much everyone else loves it. And even in interviews she said that this song isn't about a paternity test. It's not about who it is or isn't about. It's just about those lyrics and how much she loves those lyrics and how much this song has grown as a song for the fans. And I think that's something that we should all remember, that we should just love it for what it means to each of us and what it now means to Taylor rather than what it originally meant.
Red in general and All Too Well in specific really have stood the test of time and have become these fan favorites and much more than that. I can't believe that we're 4 days in from the release of Red and All Too Well, a 10-minute song which goes against everything that streaming platforms or majorly streamed songs are, is still number one on both the worldwide Spotify top 50 list and on the USA list. So
I
that's
think
crazy for a
it's
10-minute
amazing.
song.
Yeah, when nowadays songs are there's
2
because of
minutes,
yeah,
catchy.
yeah, because Spotify now has a rule where you have to listen for 30 seconds to get a stream. They make sure that that chorus is starting before 30 seconds, shorten the length of songs so that they're easily digestible, they're easy to play on radio,
Yeah,
and
and can
obviously
be
All Too Well
streamed
is not,
once and again.
yeah, really quickly, yeah. And I think that it's just shows it's a testament to Taylor's songwriting, and why people like Taylor Swift is because of her amazing songwriting. That this song is just becoming a streaming titan when, traditionally anything above 5.
With that, we have come to the conclusion of this episode in which we have really deep dived into All Too Well 10-minute version, all the new lyrics, all the new performances, everything. It's been very enjoyable and exciting to speak about it. It's something that we've waited for as a fandom for so many years, so it's really nice to really sit down and have a proper look at it and really enjoy it. Thank you very much for listening. If you did enjoy this episode, make sure to leave us a like if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe as well. If you are on Spotify or Apple, feel free to leave us a review or even let us know what you think about the whole episode and what your favorite lyrics of All Too Well are over on our Instagram, which is Swiftly Spoken Podcast.